Hello and welcome to John and James Live. My name is John Hastings and I'm with my co-host,
James CeeLo. We're back.
Mr. James CeeLo, and special guest. We have the veteran, 20 years of experience in US Naval intelligence, founder of a tech startup, and you're leading the way in edge and cloud innovation. Welcome, Mr. Jason. I was going to call you Jason Bourne. Should we change the second?
That's cool.
I think.
Yeah.
Jason.
The less well-known, less cool, less handsome.
How are you, sir? You okay, Jason?
I'm doing great. Guys. So
good, man.
So excited to see you guys this morning. How are you guys?
Yeah, we said before, you're not a morning person, are you? You're the night owl like me. So yeah, getting up early, the time difference. Because where are you at? You're at Atlanta, is it?
I am. Well, currently I'm at my partner's place in Detroit. I go back and forth between Atlanta and Detroit. That's a whole nother story. That's been love, But yeah, I'm in Detroit, but I'm on the East Coast. Yeah, it was 7 a.m. Getting up here. It's about 2 hours before I like to roll out. So you're getting the not quite caffeinated in 100%.
Yeah, it give you 5 minutes to warm up.
I'll compensate for both of you then, because I am hyper in the morning.
James has had his coffee. So we're going to talk about Jason. We'll put the heading as tech, trauma, and transformation. And you're obviously highly experienced in the tech world in the US with quite a varied background, and you've been through quite a journey as well. So tell us a little bit about yourself as younger Jason, like where you grew up, what it was like in childhood, and how you sort of got into tech.
Sure. Yeah. And the 20, you mentioned 20 years of tech. I mean, we'll go back and make corrections, but or 20 years in the Navy, but we'll start at the beginning and kind of weave around because it is a long story, and I think we can go by the top kind of quickly, and then we can dig in if there's
sure.
in particular.
Go for it.
What you'll find through this story is that I talk about this, the psychology of my parents and like the people around me and what their frame of mind is and where they came from. Because if I just tell the story, it sounds, but I mean, it is a dark story with a lot of light too, right? But you might ask, like, why in the hell would people do that? And it's the motivations of kind of where they came from. But so I'm the youngest of four kids, and birth order matters a lot. I mean, there's a lot of good psychology on that as well. The strange thing is I'm the youngest by like 8 years. So my two sisters, my brother, are all like 18 months apart. And then I was like the surprise, child. So I had this experience of growing up. You think the baby of the family is the baby, and like sometimes they grow up a bit spoiled or entitled. And I had kind of the antithesis of that experiment, of that situation. But so my folks, my dad comes from very humble beginnings, one of 9 people from up north in the U.S. to my, working class family, below probably working class family. And, he left home at, early at 16. And he's got a story about how he ended up in the Army, in the U.S. Army, in the 101st Airborne, and went to Korea. So he's a combat veteran like myself. And so he was down in Georgia on leave, and he met this young hot lady who was my mom, and they fell in love and got pregnant and got married and all of that very young. So she also came from a very humble beginnings in rural Georgia. Her father was a Navy man himself and died young. So she kind of grew up without a father, and very humble beginnings as well. So these two meet like some kind of modern, I don't know, Shakespearean, this story, and they decide to get together and go and take over the world, right? So their psychology, like they were bringing their own issues into the way they parented, and what their vision for life was. And so when I was born, I grew up in a very like lower working class kind of style of being raised. And my dad was working construction and in a factory, and I grew up in a kind of lower class suburb of Atlanta. And my mom, you can't make this up, like my mom started, this was the 70s, my mom started selling Tupperware, which is, and she was so good at it that they kept getting promoted and all of this, and then they became a distributor, then like a state, then a national distributor. And they, over a 10-year period, they went from working class to having this company with 400 people, working for them. And so it was like the,
wow.
James might be old enough to remember like the Jeffersons. That's an American thing. You know what I mean? Like there's this, so I had this this strange arc in my life, like physically and psychologically, and where I grew up on assistance, and then went to the kind of middle class burbs, and then by the time I was 13, I was like flying private and living in a country club.
Wow.
And that sounds like a great Cinderella story, but the root psychology of driving folks to go and achieve that, and kind of my order of birth in the family, provided some unique opportunities is not the right word, but there was problems with that arc in terms of my parents' focus of what was going on with me in my life, and like the people that I was exposed to, because I'll talk about my brother a lot, and I'll just jump right into some of the darkness. I think we're going to start in a pretty dark place, and I think the where we're going is to a place of light and hope and recovery and change. But and these are cliff notes, but my earliest childhood memory, I think this is accurate. There's images and sounds and things, but my earliest one of my earliest childhood memories is of terror of my brother, who's 8 years older than me. So I'm 5 at the time, and he's 13, and we're bunking together. And the story that he's telling me is that there's a man under my bed who's going to chop my feet off, and he wants me to turn the light off, and he tells me that I have to run very quickly from the light to jump back into the bed. So the man under my, and this is a 13-year-old. That's the beginning of a very long saga of physical and other types of abuse. But that was, he would put like walkie-talkies under my bed and like whisper to me, like someone's under my bed. And it's like, I've got children now. I've got a lot of children now. And it's like, I would not imagine like there would be zero tolerance. I just can't imagine, a 12 or 13-year-old doing that to a 5-year-old child. So that was, I didn't get that was my start to socialization within the family. And it's like, my sisters were already, in their late teens and going off to college and things. My parents were working 50 hours a week. And we, even at that time, we started to have nannies and housekeepers. And I was kind of being raised by this community of people. And I would be kind of left with people that worked for them, that there's no background. You know what I mean? Like there's none of these people are really vetted. And my parents are kind of, very overly trusting people, and this is now getting into the late 70s and early 80s. But that was, so my first stitches in my head, I went running down the hall. I guess I was probably 6 years old in the dark towards my parents' room and ran into a bookshelf, and I got like 5 stitches. And, as a 5-year-old, and that was, you don't have any other context. You don't have any other coping abilities. You're not socialized by your peers, yet you don't really understand what other houses or family situations are like. So that was that was my reality until I found other families that had some sense of normalcy. But
sorry to interrupt there, Jason. Was there a kind of an awakening at that point? If you then were exposed to other families and then you suddenly realize that they didn't have, that's because when you're in that little bubble,
right,
you don't know what you don't know, but then exposed to something completely different, was that a kind of an awakening moment for you?
Right? It really was. And I'm so grateful. And that's a very good question. And so at 12, it wasn't until 12 until we moved back to Atlanta, and I was in more of a suburban area with more kind of sane functioning people, and yes, and I'll but one step in between that, like at around 9, and I'm picking out a few bad stories here and there, but as examples of what was going on. But the physical and psychological abuse from my brother continued. And we can get into we don't need to get into how or why or where he's at or like his felon, like that was, but the sexual stuff started happening at as early as 9 and 10, because I was being left with unvetted people when they traveled. And now my siblings were mostly out of the house. There was no one there to kind of watch me. So they would go to conferences and trips, and like they were probably traveling 40 or 50%, and they would just leave me with these random families. And some of those things started happening at that time. By the time we moved to kind of the burbs in Georgia and in this neighborhood, I found a community of families that it was shot. It was, I don't know if I had the concept of being depressed. Like as a child, you're very present. You're just taking everything all the time. Like I didn't have the faculties to kind of process what was going on, except like, this is good and this is bad. I hope my brother's not home, or, you know what I mean? Like you're living in a very instant, moment by moment life, which is some of the beauty of the childhood, and I think somewhat protected me. But I go to these other kids' houses, and these guys, one of the guys I met in 5th grade, and it continues. There's like 3 or 4 people that are my brothers. Like their families, kind of, even though we were living in this nice big neighborhood with a lake and like amenities and upper middle, we had gone from the PJs to like the upper middle class. This is where we're at in that journey. They kind of knew that my parents weren't good people. And they kind of knew that there's like this kind of savage, unguided little child like running around the neighborhood, that nobody cared if he came home on time or any of that stuff, So like they I'm so grateful for these families. And it's like, oh, like we're going, we're going sailing, or like we're going on a walk, like we're going to a game, or like we're having family movie night. And I'm like, what is all this stuff that you speak of? You know what I mean? Like this is Sharon Grosh she would make German pancakes on a Saturday morning, and I'm like, what is this? Because it was so foreign to me, and it was so I didn't have the ability to really start processing any of that, except I just wanted more of this and less of that. So So grateful that those families were there, for me, and it started to help me understand what good looks like. Um, that was like just a 3-year period from like 9 to 12. My parents' last leg in their rise to wherever the hell they were going, got us to like the private country club, flying private. So like by the time, that was the thing I started on assistance, and ended up flying privately at 13, and like living in this exclusive gated. So they had gone to the country. It was city mouse to country mouse, and the isolation of that was extremely detrimental to me at 13, and that critical part of being socialized. And I had come into an environment that was very, I don't know, country. I mean, we say red, you know what I mean? Like there's a different kind of brutality out in the country that's not unlike what's in the city in terms of economic and levels of education and quality of being raised and all. And so there's a lot of stuff moving out to the country, especially I was this new kid coming into the scene, in 8th grade, and I'm living, and I'm the country club kid, right? And there's no other children in that whole place. It's a gated community, probably 300 homes, remote, and it's like my parents the children weren't a priority. Like the bus would drop me off. I would walk 2 miles back to this, giant, beautiful house with this view and all the amenities. No one there. My siblings gone. No children there. The internet was not a thing. There was like 12 channels, and so this isolation. I would just sit there, and it was grueling. And I dreaded it, and I lost contact with these families. So that isolation is probably, that abandonment is probably one of the core things that I've been working on, my whole adult life, when I would say I got into recovery. And I did find some peers, but not the right peers at that time, and started, at 14, started getting high, and at 15 started looking into exploring psychedelics, and love the ROI on that, because I could go away for like 12 hours for like $5, but it was not, my mind's like 10 years from being fully formed at that point, and it's like, I'm adding fuel to the fire, and still just at a loss of why any of this is happening, or how to deal with it. So the addiction, like in full force, started in my late 15s and early 16s, and I left home at 16 and lived in my car. So that was the move. And look, I can continue like the journey without talking about. I guess I'll just finish talking about I'll wrap up the journey, and then we'll talk about the lessons learned and like what I'm doing today to deal with that, unless you guys have any questions.
Sure. So what, in terms of at 16, so you leave the house. Did your parents have any idea what had been going on with you, or they completely
oblivious?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I didn't really have the language of the relationship with them. Like they knew that my brother had put me in the hospital, but you know what I mean? They knew what broken bones, and he would drop me down laundry chutes, and whenever we travel with it for work, it was just creative ways in places and situations to do with psychological abuse. But I don't think they really understood. See, this is hard. This is probably one of the last things that I have to do. Where I'm at in my path is that I've come to a place of indifference with my parents, which is not a place of like forgiveness. It's just and it's not like we don't talk about Fight Club. It's that I've tried to close. I've tried to have closure with that relationship for years, and I came to them in my 20s, my 30s, and 40s, and said, I've now been in therapy this many years. I've now been diagnosed with these many things. Like, I have this origin story. I need to share with you, like, how I feel about you allowing this to happen to me. And there was a I guess you call it gaslight. You know what I mean? Like, there was like we don't, surely not.
Denial.
Yeah. There was a real denial, but there, part of me is like, maybe it's just not in them to recognize that, it's like people throw around words like narcissist and things like, and I don't, I certainly understand that term, and I certainly I can diagnose them myself, but it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't. I've run into that wall with them hundreds of times, and I finally kind of cut bait on that and said that this is doing more harm to me trying to seek this closure with them than it is to actually get it done. So I really started focusing on myself and my own family at that point. But so yes, left home and lived in my car. So here's where the light starts, right? At 17, I'd had enough and went home and said, like, I need to go to rehab. I've got this real problem. I can't
Sure.
I can't, I don't know how I communicated it, but, I can't stop doing bad things to my body. And I don't have any word. It's gotten to the point where nobody wants to be around me, including myself. And so I went into rehab at 17, and got clean. And that was like the beginning of recovery for me. So Narcotics Anonymous, that community was the first time, bring us your tired, bring us your hurt. You know what I mean? Like, I was in a community with people largely like myself, that were suffering and struggling.
Was there again, I'm going to start scratching beneath the surface here, Jason. Was there a pivotal moment that encouraged you? Was there something specific that happened to take you on that path at sort of 16, 17 to go and get help?
Yeah, good. It's a very good question. I think I'll go with the first thing that popped into my mind, which was the first death that I saw. We were out by the lake, me and a couple of friends, and we had been on some long form psychedelics in the woods, and it's getting dark, and the people had gotten lost, and somehow an uncle showed up to help sort things out. And I don't think he was any that better off than the rest of us. I mean, he wasn't a super savory guy. I'll just say that, but he wasn't as messed up as we were. So we're standing on the side of the road by the lake, and we can hear this car coming, and we've got a couple other people looking for the girls in the woods. Excuse me. And this car comes flying down the hill and across the causeway. And the uncle said something to me, like, he's not gonna, he said something like, oh, this is going to be bad or something. And the young man who was driving this car, it had like T-tops. It was open on top. Ironically, that like a shower of sparks shot out because I guess he had dropped a wheel off the road as he was going around it, and there was kind of a high lip there, and there's like the shower of sparks. And then I remember the car, everything kind of freezes. I remember the car turning sideways in this horrific noise, and then like the car just flipping, like a movie. It was so surreal. Anyway, the car, and I'm coming down off of the stuff that I'm on, so I'm already not super lucid, and this car just rolls, and on the second roll in the street light, you see this silhouette of a person being thrown from the car and making a very morbid clap, onto the ground, and it's only like 50 or 60 yards away from me, right? And we're running up to the scene, and there's this young kid with longish blonde hair, and he's bleeding, and he's barely, and I'm like, I can't stop saying, holy shit, holy, like that all that language is coming, and I'm like, it's so overwhelming and surreal. And then I remember saying, like, it's going to be all right. And I can't remember, his last words were like, I don't think so, or something. And then like he was passed out, or he didn't make it. We stood there and the waiting ambulances came and all that stuff. And like, yeah, he passed, in that moment or shortly after. And I think it was in that moment that I really understood my mortality. Right. I understood it's not like the TV, it's not like, we're going to live forever, or you can make any choices you want without consequences. At that point, I was in that. I think the survival, my whole modality changed. And it's funny. I've written my story, and these suggestions will come up over and over, and I wrote some things down yesterday. It's like one of the things that has been the most powerful thing for me to do was a recommendation to write my story. And now I've written probably 90 pages, and I did that in 2021, and I've rewritten it a dozen times. But I still today the things are coming out, and I haven't, that scene is in my story, but I hadn't really thought and meditated on that was the point where things shifted for me, and that's so that was the culminating point, and that's what got me into recovery.
So, and that's incredible. And then what? And then after you started to get clean after that, Jason, how did sort of technology start to come in your life? Was it a sort of what you used as a sort of anchor? Did you start to get into that as a way to connect?
Yeah, that's a that's a great question. It's like, we didn't rehearse any of this. Like that's precisely so that isolation as a child. I mentioned another podcast, like I bought a computer at a yard sale, and that was what kept me company, and it was like, so my interest started at 13, in tech, and that was in large part, what entertained me or kept me distracted, and I found that I could mess around with some files and give myself some lives, and I had this thing that I had dominion over, which I had never had before, and so that, so the technology started very, very young, and what was a way to make me feel like I had company. But yes, and then after rehab at 17 and getting clean, going back and finishing high school, and I was able to maintain good grades. I'm not, I don't claim to be really smart. I'm really good at taking tests. I'm really good at inferring, right? So I remember getting, very good high marks on SATs and other prep tests without really studying, but it's not intelligence. I think it's just a bit of intuition. Anyway, but I went to a state school as a psychology major and a philosophy minor, and then Georgia Tech. I'd done very well on my SAT and some prep testing, and I got a partial scholarship. But they said, well, we want you to study computer science. So I went from psychology and philosophy to computer science. And that's when in the Navy, I'd also taken a test called the ASVAB for the Navy. They had reached out and said they wanted me to be a nuclear engineer. And I said that I was already doing this IT thing. And they're like, well, we have naval intelligence and, cryptography and telecommunications. You get to be a spy. So this story of getting into tech young and having a lot of time to myself helped shape the path to technology in my career. And it was that time now I'm like 19 and I'm in, partway through my second year of college. I'm in NA for I've got a couple years clean. Like my arc is coming up. The Navy, and I was driving an ice cream truck and I was living in an apartment with like 4 other dudes. And I was like still paying my way through school, even though I had like a partial scholarship. And like it was a hard scrabble life. I'd already been out of my home for almost 4 years, Mm. And the Navy came along and said, like, we'll pay for all of your college and free room and board and free healthcare and you get to be a spy and like all this stuff. I'm like, yeah, that sounds pretty good.
To love.
Yeah, right. And it's like we make these life-changing decisions at 19. We're like, sure, I'll do that, And I went to my girlfriend at the time and I was like, hey, I'm Maggie and I had been together for a couple of years at that point, and I'd said, I think I'm going to go do this Navy thing. They're going to pay for stuff, and I get to I don't know. I get to travel. I get room and board. It's like, and I'm like, you can come with me as my wife, but not my girlfriend. And she's like, that's your proposal. I'm like, yeah, that's all I got. So I got married young and off to the military in my career in tech. So that was, I think that the question was about, let's back up.
I'd be interested to hear what that journey was like in the naval intelligence. What was that, going in there? I know maybe you can't divulge maybe certain things, but as much as you can, I'd be very interested in that James Bondish type of spy.
Yeah. So the military in general, and I'll caveat some of this. I got to travel quite a bit with work, and I got to go to Israel. And I remember asking one of the locals, and I was just intrigued. I'm like, your police are so nice, like, and they're so sharp, and they're so squared away, and they're like, and I see they're not just doing it for Americans; they're doing it for locals too. They'll hold the door open for you and say, "How are you, sir?" Like, da da da. And I'm like, wow, like they're not intimidating, like they are like squared away, like they look, like action figures, like in terms of their and I asked one of the locals, I'm like, why are your police so nice, and he's like, you forget that in Israel you have mandatory service, you do civil service, or you do police, or you do military, and it's like everybody in the community has been through that experience, right? They're on one side or the other of it. They're either going to do it, or they're doing it, or they're on the other side. And it's like that spirit of service and that kind of discipline that's learned in those in the military is within their society, and that gratitude and protection is there. So like the military was a very positive experience in terms of providing some discipline and some camaraderie and some real familial connections. I'd had them briefly as a child with these other families, but I that was just a kind of a tourist there. Like if you're a military person, there's a fraternal, a sisterhood or a brotherhood or familyhood or whatever it is, because like it's a shared suffering, right? It's an acknowledgement of of sacrifice, So.
Did you feel during your time in the Navy, Jason, that you gravitated towards other guys that had a similar upbringing? Maybe there was trauma, maybe there was something in their past that kind of presents itself outwardly that only people that have experienced trauma can really identify. It's like a superpower.
Yeah, I think there's probably some data, if not there should be, on like a pheromone, or there is a quantum. There is, yes, is the short answer. And I believe the military, that's a chicken and egg thing, right? You know what I mean? I'm not sure which came first, but there are definitely some hard Scrabble characters in there going through some stuff. So there was that joy in having that company. Not all sunshine and rainbows. To John's question, yeah. So counter narcotics, Central and South America, working with the three-letter agencies, and the war on drugs, right, which was Nixon's, and then Nancy Reagan's like war on drugs. Like drugs aren't the problem. Like you don't have a supply problem, you have a demand problem. And it's like, so that front line of like, let's stop all the evil drugs from getting into the country, and from the Central and South American.
Is it the Escobar Narcos Netflix series?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yes, Narcos is fantastic. And there's the Narcos movie with Del Toro about the Mexican cartels. It's brutal. The Sanctity for Life, it's brutal. It was really sad to see some of the conditions that the people lived in on some of those farms, and like their worth and life expectancy, like just the brutality of it, and just this feudal system with the royalty and the rich. It's terrible. It's terrible conditions down there, and and working with the teams to go in, and I was in Intel. I was on the side that would set up and decrypt all the comms and collect all the data and find all the targets, and then would go into have to go into the field sometimes. And there's no, there's no, the whole thing, the sense of morality, the sense of trying to solve some kind of problem. Like it was just, even to my young mind in my 20s, I was like, this is bananas. Like we're not doing, like, I don't know what the solution is, but this isn't it. Like going in and like pitting cartels against each other, or like trying to seize like some percentage of the stuff so that you can like make an announcement that you did a good job or whatever. And it's like the war on drugs was nuts, and the civil war in Haiti was probably even worse. Like the casual death, and again, no fan of American policy or probably any large country policies. And it's like Haiti, we disposed someone that we didn't like, that wasn't friendly to our trade agreements, and we put in our own puppet. Not disposed, we didn't like go in and there was no coup. It was just like all of the messing with governments and politics to like get your candidate anyway. And then that person in power decided they wanted to do some genocide on the side to the people that they didn't like in the country. Then we had to go in and start a war with him to take that person out that we had put in. But the parts of the military, they're dark, and it's weird. It's like firefighters, like 90% of the time you're sitting and waiting. You get really good at waiting, and like, and there's a bit of, I wouldn't call that like big T trauma with wait, because you have this anticipation something's going to happen,
Yeah.
And then the events themselves happen. And I got kind of lost, and sorry, I forgot the question. The spy stuff is not, there's some really cool low tech sneaker net like show spy stuff. Like it's pretty sophisticated, what we do, how we develop targets, and how we create well, I'll tell you, Slow Horses is an English one with on Apple TV, and it is God, who's the guy? Gary Oldman is in that. So the spy movies I watch, the most realistic ones are like this hard scrabble, like low tech. Like it's not like the movies. Like developing targets takes years, and it's a lot of foot traffic, and you know what I mean. It's like
waiting around. Yeah,
it's a lot of waiting around.
Yeah, I could imagine. And I heard as well, Jason, there was some connection with Edward Snowden. Am I correct? Was there a link with that, or you can't say anything about that?
Oh, yeah, I've been thinking I can't talk about that
too much on that one.
No.
Okay.
Okay. So changing the subject then very quickly. I am fascinated, Jason, just to scratch again underneath the surface. I'm listening to you speak, and I can hear there's a lot of empathy there. There's a lot of awareness, self-awareness, but awareness of what's going on around you when you were describing the stuff that was going on with the deployments that you were having, the plight of the people that you were surrounded with. Now, I'm interested to see from you in terms of your childhood and that displacement, that isolation, the separation anxiety that you must have had from childhood, and the anger that invariably comes out of that, but still you have this empathy and this awareness. Was that something you had to specifically work on? Was it there just naturally that this is part of you, or was that an evolution of you because of what happened? Because we know with the military, invariably there's this process of breaking you down and building you back up again. So you become directable, I guess, that you can follow orders.
Right.
You're not going to be an isolated entity, that you will be told to do something and you fucking do it fundamentally.
Right.
So just talk me through that sort of, if I just recap then of the potential anger there, this resentment because of the abandonment.
Right.
And this empathy, this ability to be able to see the plight of others.
Yes, no, that's a very good question. That there's a nurture versus nature kind of way that I think about this, right? And is that was I created into that, or is that who I am fundamentally? And I don't know the net if it matters, but it feels like it's a bit of both. But like the military kind of tearing you down, I was already kind of at my I don't want to say bottom, but at my most honest version of myself. I'd already at 17, I'd already come through the crucible. I think there's a lot of questions to ask there, but I'm just kind of getting lost in my response to the question, because I was thinking about moving on to the last in the last 14 minutes, like the empathy. Is that what you're talking about? Like where did the empathy come from? Or recap your question. I'm sorry. Like
there was a lot in there. I mean,
a lot.
My mind just went to lots of different sort of areas, but really it was that
one thing to
the empathy, and again, sort of, because
I think it was more the evolution of character, wasn't it?
Yeah, the anger potentially that was there, the evolution of the character that actually allowed you to have that level. And where you were saying is you had that, you went through the crucible at such a young age, at 17.
Right.
And you're already at that point where, the ego may have been sort of dissolved.
Yes.
Yes. And you were on the way up. Whereas a lot of us experience that much later in life. You seemingly had it quite early.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yes and no. It comes in. It came and went. and I'll fast forward through a few things. You know, after combat, after I'd come back from being deployed, and my current wife, I caught her in bed with someone else. Like, it was like a movie. Like, there's so many parts of my life are like a meme. I'm like, are you serious? Like, this is silly. Like, this really only happens in the movies, but it doesn't. And, you know, you come back from being deployed, your wife is having an affair, she leaves. There's a period of darkness. I was stationed in Key West. I bounced and bar backed at a bar owned by a family. A lot of things go through Key West. A lot of unsavory things go through Key West. Got back into, you know, V2 of my addiction and grieving, and went really back into a dark place. And, you know, didn't like, it was lower probably than I had before, because I had more to, I don't know, I had been more to lose, I guess, you know. And I was, you know, I almost was a career guy. I turned down orders for another 6-year enlistment, and I had already made good rank while I was in, and I was going to go to Menwith Hall, England, which was where Turing was, and like work with the English intel folks, you know. Anyway, she goes back to Atlanta, takes our kids. So young father, you know, young marriage, young, you know, soldier, you know, and she goes back to Atlanta. And so I go back to Atlanta, but I couldn't afford to go back. So I stayed in Key West for almost another 2 years, and was really got into addiction version 2. And was a mess really until like for like a good 5 years. I was a functioning addict. You know, like I paid my child support, and I paid my, I don't think I paid alimony because neither of us had any money, but it was like, I paid all the things I was supposed to pay. I like had like an apartment and a car, you know, and was like a functioning human on the surface. And met another person and fell in love again. I'll fast forward for time, but that deep depression, now what it's PTSD, like the PTSD started with the psychological and physical abuse as a child, and sexual abuse, and then got another serving of that in the military. I had not really, NA and recovery had put me on a path of healing and exploration and spirituality, kind of cracked the door for me, but I hadn't really started like doing the work. I'd gotten enough tools in my bag to like stay on the planet and like get up and go to work, you know what I mean? And like, and, you know, become I've always been a good person, like managing the actions. But anyway, this continued on until so 2012. Gosh, it would have been like in my late 30s. So now I'm married again, kids, have some money, have a pretty nice house in the city, traveling like 50% for work. But I was a functioning, you know, addict, basically. I was just alcohol, right? Alcohol, everyone gets a pass on alcohol. It's a drug, everybody. Yeah. You're an addict. Like, you know, and like, so I was traveling 50%, and this is when I'd gotten up to like 260 pounds. Like, all the debt doesn't go away. It just accrues interest, you know, like the emotional debt.
You can't escape.
Yeah. I was just saving for later, and it was building up, and I wasn't really doing any work, right? I wasn't, and you know, and I had to take time off work. There's a procedure where they put you to like treatment resistant depression, treatment resistant anxiety, you know, BPD, like rapid cycling. Like I had like, it was like a bingo of all my diagnosis, and everyone's like, "What? We don't know what's." Like here's try this drug, try that drug, try this drug, right? And I was like, I got where I had to take time off work. I was at a real bottom. You know, all of that had caught up to me, and I was desperate. And I had seen a video or something about. I'd heard of something called ayahuasca in passing, and there were no like documentaries. Maybe there were, but it was not. It was so in the corners of recovery that no one really knew about it. So I did some research and imported the constituent materials to create it, and I had a recipe from Airwood, the darknet, and I boil, and it's like a 4-day process, of steeping, and then you put this MAOI together with this one substance that's very high in dimethyltryptamine, and I sat solo by myself, no sans ceremony, sans knowledge, sans in anything, like not the dieta, like my body wasn't ready for it, you know what I mean? I was
it's not recommended, everybody. It's definitely don't do
not
it.
Try that at home.
Do not try that at home. This is now 13 years ago, and I'm desperate for, this is a guy that can't stop drinking, can't stop eating, 260 pounds, like these feelings of like not wanting to be around anymore, and anyway, sat and drank like 4 ounces, which is like 4 times more than is reasonable. Then like I have an ounce when I sit in ceremony today, but like had the breakthrough, like Neil Brennan, who's a writer for the Chappelle Show. I quote him often. He said, "Yeah, it cured my anxiety, my depression, and my atheism." Right, like in one sitting. And he's like, they're cured, like
one fell swoop. Boom.
Yeah. Tell us about that experience, Jason. What is it like? Because this is quite an interesting talk, really. Because we thought it was going to be about tech, but it really is going back to sort of Mother Nature, isn't it? And tech is a bit of a facilitator, and we've actually got real world human problems.
Yes,
really, we need to be concentrating. So, what was that experience like, and how did it open up a window for you in your mind?
Yeah, I the most ironic, and yeah, I know this is tech, trauma, and transformation, and like I know there's been a focus kind of on the trauma, but this is the transformation and the technology. Like, the strangest thing is you're 100% lucid, you're hyper lucid, more like we're talking right now, but even more dialed in, like you've had like 20 cups of coffee, like everything is, and you're not high. Like if you or any of your users have any experience with the other with psychedelics, and there's an other worldliness there. I mean, that's the only thing that I can see. Like there's a pattern in nature, and the pattern comes through. Like you can see that everything is connected on a technical level. Like you can see, like if we were sitting around a campfire together, not on video, and we were in ceremony, I would see like my energy flowing out of me and into all the living materials around me and into you, and then in back to me. And it's not a hallucination. It's not a there's like a matrix that comes through, and it's baffling because you're totally lucid, you're totally aware, and you're not. You see a fabric that ties everything together, and a truth came through. It comes through every time, which is old in our philosophy and scriptures. Like harming John or harming James is harming me, like on a technical level. Like that's technically true. Like the connection I have to humanity is personal. You know what I mean? And so there's the way these insights come to you are like, it's not just visually, like you feel a level of connectivity with nature and all the people around you, and there's a consciousness that comes through that is, it's pretty intense. Like it is not it's not an easy ride. It is not, and it's so unreal, otherworldly, and it is so undeniable. And what that consciousness is organic and kind of geometric in nature, but it is what it communicates often. And again, there's no language, is that like, this is all there is, and it's a bit manic, but what I've come to understand through sitting a lot, is that this moment is all there is. Like, truly, like, that went from theory to reality for me. Like, this is the best conversation I've ever had in my entire life, because it's the only conversation I've ever had. It's the only one that exists in the moment. That's the only one that matters. Like, it might as well be the best. Like, this is the best cup of coffee I've ever had, because for all intents and purposes, it is you know what I'm saying? Like, it made me radically present and radically grateful and radically connected. And
it's an ancient wisdom there, isn't there? I think it's like when you're talking, I'm listening, and it's very much like the mycelium network that's going on underneath the surface. You don't see it, but everything is connected.
Right.
You know, trees are talking to each other through this network.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. 100%.
And, you know, the technology that we're talking about, this is ancient stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But technology is based on that in terms of networks.
Yes.
But it existed for millennia prior to it, but it's just we've replicated it. We've created this thing based on that interconnectedness. And again, just going back to what you were saying when you were sort of 13 years old and being I think you were successful with technology where you hadn't been successful in life.
Right.
That it had given you this gift of accomplishment. And I think about my son, my youngest son, and he had this gaming, dare I say, addiction. But in conversations with him, he told me, it's like, Dad, that's the only time that I actually felt like I was achieving anything, that I was moving forward in the world, that I was successful in this thing, in this artificial world that I had control over.
Yeah.
And when you don't have control of your environment, when things are beyond your control, what your parents are doing, what your siblings are doing, that you have that ability to be able to be successful in that realm. And that kind of brings us circling back to that moment when you're doing this psilocybin and you're suddenly aware of the interconnectedness, that you're back in that almost matrix.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's what we're seeking fundamentally, is that inner
connection.
Yeah. That was the dimethyltryptamine, the ayahuasca. But the gaming, so it's a dopamine addiction. You know, I wrote about some of that in the AI article. Right. And it is gamifying connectivity, which we want, right, and rewarding and incentivizing that connectivity. But it is accomplishing the tasks, like public recognition, and completing tasks release dopamine in your body. It's there in us for a survival way, so that we continue to do things that keep us alive, like build shelters and make babies and all of that. I've got kids. The gaming, it is an addiction on a technical level. Like getting the likes. Like, I'm addicted to this Harry Potter mobile game. Like I can't stop. You know what I mean? It is and I'm aware of it, and I have to like limit myself because it's so soothing to like. That's why we write lists and check the things off the list because it gives us a dopamine. But gambling and heroin and cocaine and alcohol and sex and also in fighting, there's a lot of other things that give us dopamine that as well, right? So but that immersive experience, I think, that otherworldliness to particularly these long form, it's like a really good book in real life that you can immerse yourself in when you want for as long as you want. And story is what we're looking, it's how we view the world, and how we view ourselves, and it informs all of our actions. And I heard this thing in one of the medicine circles when someone said we manifest all reality through story. And I thought, well, that's a bit woo even for me. But then we talked about it, and I've been thinking about it. And it's like the story I tell myself about myself informs my action, and like we want to be the hero of our own story. And when we feel that we're out of sync with that, our story is not true. You know what I mean? And I think sanity is a measurement of how accurate your story is. But the story I tell myself about myself informs all of my behaviors, all of my actions, and the stories. It is where I fit into a relationship or society or work, or if I'm doing good work or not good work, if I'm being selfish or not. That is all story, and that is what the gaming industry and kind of bolstered by AI and the dopamine is trying to give us like a sense of value and purpose, right? And I think we're in the midst of another dropout generation, right? If you look at the 60s and 70s was a pushback against the Stoics, or against the hard scrabble Stoicism of the 40s and 50s. And I didn't even get into like there's been so many things. Stoicism has actually helped me a lot. That was actually a gateway to like persevering through all this stuff. But in the 90s, Gen X was kind of a pushback against the selfishness of the 80s. We're cycling upward as a society. We're evolving, and you see these ebbs and flows of like this focus on materialism and ego, and then like an expansion of dropping out, and then there's like this consumerism is like a religion. It's like it's so fulfilling, and we're just and where it is, you pull the lever, you get a prize, and they with the most prizes wins. It's like that is falling further and further and further apart with every iteration, and legalizing some of these ancient medicines is part of. People are waking up, like movies like The Matrix come out, like I'm an optimist, but I am concerned about my own story about how I got here, but society in general. But I don't think I'm concerned. I would say I'm excited about where we're going, and what's changing.
What do you think we're waking up to, Jason? And where do you think we're going with this AI and tech? Where do you see things from 5, 10, 20, 50 years?
I think there's that's a good question. I've been thinking about psychologically and philosophically, how we're waking up. And I think that our tech, like if you look at Apple's a pretty great company. Like their tech is very understated and beautiful, and they're trying to create technology that's kind of aligns with art, and they're really focused on the human experience and like the usability and everything being understated and kind of in the background, right? And kind of what we would think of like a very cool science fiction movie. Like the tech is kind of obscure and muted.
Yeah.
You know.
The office is beautiful, isn't it? I don't know where that office is. The big circular.
Oh, the Apple office. I don't know. I've not been in it, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if it was designed as a mimic to the rest of their products. But I think where we're going is there's going to be, I think the Apples of the world, Apple as an idea in terms of building tech that's not invasive and not intrusive and not in your face, and just a very utilitarian approach to technology versus like leveraging the technology to get as many people as you can into your game or onto your platform or onto your, like this frantic energy. We're like kids with this new toy. Like for 300,000 years, we've been around, 298,000 of those, we were sitting around a fire with like 6 of us, right? Like that was our world, and only in the last 20, 30 years, really, we've been connected to everything everywhere all at once, and like the human genome and the human psychology is not prepared. We're all losing our minds a bit, because it's like, I can do everything to everybody, and it's like I can, even talking about it, I can like feel this frantic energy. So I think the technologies that are leading the charge of like trying to make that chaos a bit less, or make it a bit more utility, but the technology, it's supply and demand, right? Psychologically, as a species, I'm encouraged that we're slowing down and that we're dropping out, and that may be the chamber. It's my own idealism, and that's kind of where my friend group is, but it's becoming pervasive, because just 12 years ago there was no access to some of these adjunct therapies about IV. You know what I mean? Like there wasn't. I think the need was there, but the knowledge wasn't out, and the tech gets the knowledge out, and so I think the technology is going to transform along with the psychology. I think the AI, in terms of like self-driving cars, like I don't know if you've driven lately, but it's horrible. Like it's terrible. No one's paying attention. It's absolutely madness. Like, and it's so frustrating. But like, I think the technology can reduce our levels of anxiety. If I could get in a car and just not drive it, like, and nobody else was driving too, and I didn't care about, like, that's such a nerve-wracking experience, and it seems trivial, but I think the technology is going to reduce some of this automation around these menial tasks, and it's going to give people a lot more time to think. And right now, what they're doing with that time is like getting as many likes or playing as many games as they can, generally speaking, right?
Yeah.
Some people are doing this, right? So I'm an optimist, and I'm an optimist about the human transformation, the psychologically, sociologically, that's happening with us, and that the tech is going to, as this evolves over here, the demand is going to go up here, and more products and services are coming in. Yes, they're for profit. Yes, autonomous vehicles are going to be great. Everyone wants one, and because they want the first person on the block. You know what I mean? Like, I wanted the first Tesla or whatever, and it's like, that's fine. Capitalism, free markets work to propagate that. But I think the psychology is, we're trending in the right direction, and the tech's going to follow, and then to go back and forth. So.
Do you think that people are underestimating the amount of potential change in the next 10, 20 years? Do you think people have really grasped it, or do you think that it won't be as fast?
I think it is going to be as fast. I think it might even be faster than some of the expectations. I think people are underestimating it. the autonomous vehicles, I've got kids that are driving, have been driving for a long time, and like my 10-year-old, I'm like, she may not need to get her driver's license. Like that's how fast I think this is going. And I know that the autonomous, it's not just about the autonomous vehicles, but the that shift and what it's doing to our society is moving very quickly. I don't know. I think it would take some more time to unpack and look at the data, but like if you look at just this connectivity, I was just on my phone. I can talk to anyone anywhere all the time. Like the bandwidth and the networking, like as our demand to build new products and services, the infrastructure is catching up to all of that as the demand rises as well. So I think I think in 5 years, I think we should schedule a call now for 2030, and we can all we can get a little
see where we're at.
Put our predictions in there.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be vastly different in the next 5 years. I think just the decriminalization of some of the plant medicines and like the focus on recovery and healing, and that's going to continue. I think we're in a place right now where people are talking about what the problem is. There's a lot of people on a journey to solve that, but as the genome, as the psyche of as a people gets healthier, we're going to start having better request of the market to provide technology for us that enables our pursuit of kind of getting whole and checking out. Because people are suffering. So
I think as a way of bringing this to a close, because aware of the time, I think doing this, what we're doing right now, is hugely important going forward for the future, that we still have live conversations,
right,
and connecting on this kind of level, that we can see each other, even though we're on a screen, we can still look each other in the eye,
right,
and we can respond to what's being said in front of us in real time. And I don't know there's ever going to be any compensation for that, certainly not necessarily in our lifetimes. We could all be avatars and we could be responding to each other as an automated set of ones and zeros. But I think for the time being, this is all that we have at our disposal to actually make sure that we are still maintaining those relationships and connecting on a deep and meaningful level.
Yes. I mean, that is, couldn't agree more. And I think that's really what it's about. I do, as we wrap, I had like this outline. I wrote all the things that I thought I'd follow a clean line, but we just got lost in there, which is fine. But I did write, there's a few things that have been pivotal for me that I want to share. The big one is write your story. I didn't even really get to finish that arc where I was getting sick again. And well, I just kind of stopped with ayahuasca. That put me on this 10-year journey of losing, all the weight and all the other habits. But part of it was the EMDR therapies. And if you don't know that those are, you can look those up and your brain spotting.
I know that. I've had that. Yeah.
Yes. And brain spotting as well. Like V2 of EMDR, which has been really unlocked some things for me. It's hard to find a good practitioner, as I tried it a few times.
Yeah, agreed.
And but the one of the EMDR docs said, write your story. And this was probably in 2020. My life took a weird turn again. We'll have to have the 2-hour version or V2 of that, or we'll just have a private conversation.
We will.
I want to know your stories as well. It's not all about me, but he said, write your, and it's not journaling. It's not like, Chad cut me off, I want to fight him. You know what I mean? Like in the day, you know what I mean? It's like, I started from the earliest, and some of the reasons I can recall some of these things and go back to psychology, like I started from my earliest memories, and I just wrote with no rhyme or reason, and over years of like rereading and organizing and editing, and it was so cathartic. It was so it was one of the best things that I've ever done for myself, one of the best recommendations, and it was so, because I've told my story, but like writing is like a gift to me, and it was like, God, it was just so, it was so powerful, and to like go over and over and over again, and jump around, because like a memory will come up, and I'm like, well, I'll just write that little memory, then I'll work it in later, you know. And it's like, it has really allowed me to release, you know, for years, even after the medicine, like I still had this tension in my chest, even though fundamentally things had changed in terms of my gratitude and presence. But I just can't encourage anyone. You guys have your own dark stories, right? Your own dark passengers, as it were, you know, and so many people do, and that's a sad thing, right? And like something is like, it costs, if you have a piece of paper it's like, it's free. Like, write your story, start from the earliest, piece it together. It was just so powerful. And I'm probably, you're writing it down. That's your story?
It's not started yet. This is the book that I'm going to use. And I don't know what the resistance is, but I know that it's going to be good for me. And I don't know why at the moment that I'm not doing it.
Yeah, I had the same resistance, and probably that particular doc was probably the one that I was just ready to actually take the advice. But like, just start. Like, that's amazing, because you it's going to be choppy and weird and disconnected, and you know, just
like you said, it's not attaching anything to the outcome. It's literally, and no one's going to read it apart from you. It's got to be the attitude, isn't it?
Yes. And I've shared it with a single digit number of my, really 2, maybe 3. Now the analog writing, I prefer, but I did move it to digital, because it got too hard to swap things around. So, yeah, like, I'm so excited for you. Just start writing. You can figure out all the other stuff later. It changed. It was as life-changing for me as it was my first and continued ayahuasca experiences, like those 2, and probably brain spotting, like those 3 modalities. That would be the 3, the trinity of, you know, if I could only do 3 things, and none of the other,
Holy Trinity.
right?
Yeah, it's a good thing. I did it 10 years ago before I went to a therapy, because I wanted to save money. So I wanted to give them the download of everything that had happened before I went into the therapy. So I gave it to the therapist beforehand. So he was like, okay, what's this? It's like, I know it's my life story. So we don't have to spend hundreds of pounds. Yeah, hundreds of pounds talking about it.
Right. That's brilliant. Now, was it cathartic for you? Did you get as deep as you wanted to? Or?
I was doing, it was good at the time. It was near where Alan Turing was at Bletchley Park. That's where I used to live, near there, actually. It was, then I had a therapist there, was seeing him probably 3 times a week. Sometimes we would do a 3-hour session. So it was very cathartic, and him understanding the whole context of a story was just much better for the therapist as well. So I definitely would recommend people to sort of get things down on paper and gain a bit of context and understanding of their personality. I sort of went into personality typing and all sorts of different areas as well, which was quite interesting. Like Enneagram, I know Tim Ferriss is very interested in that. MBTI.
Yeah.
We've used it with AI as well now with the tech side to sort of mash different personality typings together and personal stories, and it comes out with a very unique personal development plan. It even predicted James's wife's job from his personality type and his life story, which is kind of scary, isn't it, James?
It is. What is that? What is that one called?
Enneagram was the was probably the best one. ENNEAGRAM, and MBTI is like cognitive functions. So you normally have like 4 cognitive functions of how you think, but Enneagram's a very spiritual self-development path that sort of describes what your coping mechanisms are from childhood. So it turns out I sort of understood James when we first met, and I saw myself in James, and I got him to take the test straight away, and he was exactly the same personality type as me, which was a sort of a 9-wing 1. Because we'd have similar backgrounds, similar behavioral patterns. So yeah, there probably is patterns in human behavior, isn't there? So I guess with AI, that's how it's crunched patterns and behaviors together to get some type of outcome there. So it's quite interesting.
Yeah. Where can people get in contact with you, Jason? Where's the best place for them to reach out?
Yeah, LinkedIn's probably the best place for me. So / Jason Grimm altogether. You know, I've got my CV out there. I think it's got my email, and kind of doxed myself a bit. I should probably take that off, but yeah, my just LinkedIn's fine, and then and we can message from there.
Perfect. I appreciate you coming on, Jason, and yeah, great story, and I hope it inspires people to, you know, I think there's like you've worked with Simon Sinek as well, and we didn't really get into that part, but
that'll be
it's the whole thing about vulnerability and just being honest. And there, you know, there's humans behind this tech. We're trying to liberate ourselves, aren't we, with technology, not for it to enslave us. And we need to look at the real stories behind what tech is really meant to be for. It's just not an endless profit game. We want to be better humans. We want to advance as a civilization, don't we? So I guess that's really where companies, people will need to focus on in those areas.
Yeah, 100% agree. I mean, I think that is the market, and this is the ebb and flow of the, you know, materialism to existentialism. you know this. I'm excited. We're on an outward and inward bound journey, but it's like it's expanding.
It's evolving, isn't it? It's evolving into something.
Evolving. The tech is catching up, and it's listening. And capital, you know, the free market's listening to us too. So that's all encouraging to me. So
yeah,
fantastic.
Right, take care, guys. Thank you, everybody out there, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it, Jason. Thank you very much.
Thank you.